Okay, the streaming will be going on, just to let everybody in the audience know, so that when they're speaking, it can be picked up by the microphones. Nobody wants to get caught with a hot mic. Okay, I will call the Southbury Board of Selectmen regular meeting July 1st, 2021 to order at 7 p.m. Can we have the pledge? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If I may, before we start, if we could have a moment of silence for Harmon Andrews. Harmon passed away June 26th. He was a volunteer of the town for over 50 years, serving as first selectman, member of the Board of Selectmen, member of the Planning Commission, up till just recently, and member of the Board of Assessment Appeals, in addition to serving as a captain in the United States Army and a veteran of the Korean War. And he certainly has served the town of Southbury and his country. And I thank you. I'd also like to take a minute for a moment of silence, unfortunately, for the victims of the building collapse in Miami, and our thoughts going out to not only the victims and their families, but also to the first responders who are trying to do what they can do and to rescue as many as they can. And I thank you for that. First up on the agenda is the presentation of the Strategic Plan Commission. If you would like to come up. Hello, John.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for this opportunity. I have sent some materials to the board in advance. We gave you some background on what we're going to talk about tonight on the 24th, and then we gave you a copy of the strategic plan update on the 25th. The idea being that we're going to cover some information here. We'd like you to possibly give us an approval, but you need time in advance to think about these things and perhaps have some priorities of your own. So, what we're here tonight to talk about is to review our recommendations, include any Board of Selectmen recommendations that you may have, and then if you're prepared, to approve the next 5 priorities so that we can begin our research on them. The purpose of this is to demonstrate the methodology that we've used to come up with our strategic plan priorities. None of this is new or remarkable, but it's important sometimes to look at it. Things that have low importance and are less urgent are in the blue box, and I'm sure the Board of Selectmen don't spend any time in the blue box because of your understanding of how valuable your time is. The green box has things that are low importance, but people may feel that they're very urgent. These are things that can be placed on the back burner. Your work is up there in the gold box, which are activities that are important and urgent, and they're things that have to get done. And this we leave to our elected officials, boards and commissions, committees, task force, and so forth. The things that are important but less urgent is the domain of the Strategic Plan Commission. And we work on those areas with the approval of the Board of Selectmen. And so the first 5 things that we covered, we felt were in that category. They were important, but nobody was working on them because they weren't deemed to be urgent. And in many communities, certainly not Southbury, these things are, this is where the term kick the can down the road comes from, where people say, well, you know, we don't have time for that right now, so let's not worry about it. So the beauty of the Strategic Plan Commission is we do have the time and the volunteers to work on those items. So, for review, and I do this, I know the board knows all this, but there are people that might be viewing this that don't have this understanding. This whole process started back in December of 2009 when the Charter Revision Commission decided that the town of Southbury needed to have a strategic plan developed by the first selectman, approved by the Board of Selectmen. And for a number of years, this was not done. It was not brought to their attention. However, in March of 2017, our current first selectman wrote a letter to the community and said we'd like to work on the strategic plan and solicited volunteers. About a month later, we got a strategic planning task force approved by the Board of Selectmen, and we started our work. Let's see, did I jump too far? Yeah. In April of 2018, we did a Southbury Community Assessment Survey. The purpose of talking about this is that the plan is the community's plan. What do the people who reside in Southbury, who pay taxes in Southbury, or have businesses in Southbury see for the future over the next 5 to 10 years? So anyways, we took a survey. We got 1,177 responses. They were expecting 400, so we were very pleased with the number of responses. Then they presented the results both at Heritage Village and Town Hall a few days later. We held a business summit. This was sponsored by the Southbury Business Association and the Southbury Economic Development Commission. We got more input from that. And then on November of 2018, the board approved the strategic plan, which is what we've been working on. At that point, we dissolved the task force. We no longer needed it. And the commission was created by the board. We started working on our first 5 priorities, which I'll review briefly in a minute. And then in December of 2019, the Strategic Plan Commission was incorporated into the Southbury Town Charter. So we are now officially part of the ongoing government of the town of Southbury. So the first 5 priorities were assigned to us in August 2019. We've already prepared 3 white papers and made presentations to the board, and 2 still are ready to be presented in the not too distant future. And well, I'm going to go over this very quickly just for purposes of background, but on February 4th, we did the Affordable Housing Plan for Southbury. The Planning Commission recommended Malone and McBroom prepare Southbury's first Affordable Housing Plan, and the Board of Selectmen approved the recommendation, so that's underway. That's good news. Partner with the state to develop a proactive and collaborative process to plan for the future uses of the Southbury Training School. We presented that on March 4th. The Board of Selectmen sent questions to the Department of Administrative Services regarding the future of the Southbury Training School, and you're waiting for responses, I understand, from them. This deals with the combining of planning and zoning. This was presented to the board in May. The board decided that they would defer any action until after the Plan of Conservation and Development is updated in 2022. While we did our research, we found out that having a single planning and zoning commission is not unheard of. Since the commission was created in 1955, it was only combined. We didn't know that, but we found that out. And then the commission was split into 2 separate commissions in 1967. So, by the way, you'll all get a copy of this presentation later tonight. Revisit the Pomperaug Regional Community Center. We've not yet presented that to you. Some recent considerations that the board has talked about just informally. There's been talk about perhaps something at the Edgewood facility or a potential future use of Ballantyne Park, depending on how things turn out. And last but not least is the Community Conversations on Aging report. 40% of our population is made up of senior citizens. We've not presented that to the board. However, the good news is that the Senior Services Department is independently preparing a strategic plan, which we 100% endorse. And they're concentrating on senior center programming, transportation needs, nutrition, and infrastructure. So we're monitoring that and will be as supportive as they would like us to be. Some more good news. We went through and updated the strategic plan, and remarkably, 66% are either done or underway. And to be honest with you, we didn't know that because we hadn't done an update. We just been working on it, but we went back, we went through every single one, and we found out that 66% are underway, either being addressed by elected officials, town employees, boards and commissions, committees, task forces, or community organizations. So we took the balance of the action items and consolidated them into 10 new priority candidates for us to recommend to the board. So when we did that ranking, we looked for potential for positive 1 to 5 year impact on Southbury, and our research where we could provide valuable input on items that are not urgent and therefore are not being actively addressed by anybody else in town. So we didn't want to be redundant. So, quick review, these are the 10. I'm not going to go through them because you've all seen them, but to the extreme right, those are the strategic plan action items that relate to each of those 10. So we took those action items, we consolidated them, and came up with those 10 priority candidates. We then went through another process and came up with our top 5, which I will review. Looking at the town of Southbury's IT, communications, technology, infrastructure, research, Southbury emergency response. As you know, Southbury, in the not too distant future, we've been hit by tornadoes, power losses, all sorts of disaster relief activities, and a worldwide epidemic, the COVID-19. And the issue was, what lessons have we learned from all of this? And how can they be put forward for the future of Southbury? We also talked about developing a master plan for the best use of town-owned properties. And when we took a look at that, believe it or not, the assessor's office told us that Southbury has 695 properties that they own, which I found to be amazing. I never knew that. A little under 140 of them are 2 acres or more. So once again, we ought to have an inventory and find out what they're, where they are and what they're being used for, if anything. Next was identify strategies to help Southbury address sustainability. And lastly was review and update information on town governance options. So this is a little background on each of those. The technology part, we were looking at 5G, bandwidth, fiber optics, cell phone towers, satellites, hotspots, and so forth. And especially since the pandemic, people were working out of home more than ever before. So having access to this type of capability is even more important now than it was. The other thing that was brought up by one of our members was the subject of microgrids. And to be honest with you, I didn't know what a microgrid was. But it's a local energy system which incorporates 3 key components: generation, storage, and demand, all within a bounded and controlled network. And it's possible, and it depends on our research, whether or not that's appropriate for Southbury to consider in the future. The emergency response, as I mentioned, survey town departments, community organizations, and local businesses, and find out what lessons we can learn from this. A key element here is we have a local emergency planning commission which we've not talked to. So we think one of the reasons we want to look into this is find out what they've learned and document that, put it together in a white paper, help educate the community in this area. Now, this particular commission includes people from the Emergency Management Department, Board of Selectmen, the police, the fire, ambulance, public works, Pomperaug Health District, IT, Finance Department, and First Selectman. So everybody who's anybody is represented in this commission. Best use of town-owned properties. Once again, I said classify the inventory, determine location, size, classification, and potential alternate uses. We're going to talk later about alternate uses for Main Street South. And one of the things we might want to know is what town properties do we own, and are any of them appropriate for perhaps placing some of our properties somewhere else. We also want to review how these properties are managed and opportunities for improvement. And the buildings we're talking about are on Main Street South and Peter Road: Town Hall, Parks Rec, Senior Center, Police, Public Works, and Fire Department. Identify strategies to help Southbury address sustainability. Work is already underway here with the Sustainable Southbury that the board has approved, which is very good. But we'd like to rack up the key issues that impact sustainability, and such as renewable energy, energy efficiency, recycling, open space preservation, and et cetera, et cetera. One thing that was brought up was the need for electrical vehicle recharging. Apparently, this was amazing to me, but more electric vehicles were sold last year than gasoline engine vehicles. I did not know that, but I'm told that that's true. So if that's true, we may want to look into the possibility of providing recharging stations. And then review and update information on town governance. The last three charter revision groups all touched on this, and they did a bunch of studies, and there's a lot of information out there, but it's all in different compartments and stored in different places. So we thought we'd like to review that and then talk about it and find out, is this something that is appropriate or not? And once again, this is a long-term thing. Even if we agreed that it was a good idea, it would take years to get to the point of implementation. The other thing we thought is investigate the experience of comparable communities with different forms of government. And we have the resources of the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, and Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments, and the Council of Small Towns. And the key here is to measure the outcomes. So if they went to a different form, what was the impact of that on financing, budgets, and mill rates? So the question is performance. You don't want to change just for the benefit of changing. You want to change and see if, in fact, it was beneficial for the community. So, very quickly, that's our review. We're ready, willing, and able to accept any recommendations that the board may have. And then after we hear that, if you have any, we'd like your thoughts on approving this so that we can get working on a going forward basis. So I'll adjourn my comments at this point.
So if I may, John and I met. One of the things in the strategic plan that's been lingering out there for a multitude of reasons has not been able to, we've not been able to address, and it takes a lot of time. One of which is, we asked if we should, we've always been wondering if we should organize our police department. Should we organize? What will it take? And in discussing it with John, it's not just a matter of putting in hiring a chief of police and getting them a car. That's the simple side of it. The question is there enough infrastructure? Let's say it made sense, but the problem is our police department, the building, which
Talking
was
about the facility,
originally
right.
the facility, is it capable of having an organized police department, and if that's not the case, I personally think, not to hold me to it, but I think it's too small when you get evidence rooms and everything else that goes along with an organized police department. And the last thing we want to do with citizens is tell them, it's going to be $200,000 to get a chief and benefits, and then say, oh, and by the way, we need to build a building, so we need to do that. I also have been talking with Justin on and off. This concept came to me many years ago from first selectman, Alfie Candido, who made mention, said, if I can move everything off of Main Street and get it on the rolls for commercial property,
Right.
he said I would do that. So I always listened to that, and then in talking with Kevin Bielmeyer on economic development, the most valuable commercial property we have is Main Street. There's no question. So the concept, the other thing we're faced with in a town is in sustainability. There's going to be a very big shift in recycling and managing our waste flow. Unfortunately, what used to be our dump is capped and is now our transfer station. So we don't really have a recycling system designed for our future needs, whether it be 5 years or 10 years, or as this town has always looked out, 20 years down the road. What do we do about managing? I mean, we went from, we're recycling mattresses that we never thought that's what would be, but we recycle a lot of stuff, and it causes problems up at the transfer station. So the question I floated out there with a little bit with Justin and talking about real estate, could there be a development of a master plan with the property that's owned at exit 15 that we've purchased? One of the things I have learned was from Dolores Curtis when she was in the office. They said the last thing you want to do is pull your commercial development off of your center and put it someplace else away from town. An example of that is the malls that went in Waterbury that killed their downtowns, and now we're trying to bring our downtowns back. This would take a very, very hard look at the possibility of long range, and I don't mean 5 years or 10 years. It could be a long range plan with the value of the real estate on Main Street, the increase in the grand list if we were to bond to build, and a master plan of what exit 15 could be, so that we could have not that I don't like being on Main Street, but, and including our fire department having a new firehouse and they have said that being up in that area right off of 84 would give them the ability to be onto the highway and get to any of our exits and into the village. It would work well up there, right. And that's just casual conversations. And I know the fire department's talking about possibly getting a bigger building or adding on or looking into that. So all these things have been coming together, and it needs to be analyzed financially. How much longer are we going to be here in Town Hall before we have to do a major upgrade in our facility to meet the next? And another thing that happens is I'm finding, and this is, we talked about this, is if you had it, you could also build into this municipal center is a community center, senior center that is built for the design.
You're talking about a campus, municipal campus.
A full municipal campus.
Right.
I don't know if it's even possible up there, but it is town-owned property, and this was the thought, and Justin, you and I discussed this a little bit about that. And so that is kind of what, this would all come together along with, if you were to say, okay, it makes sense, let's say if it makes sense to organize our police department, and the cost, because of having to build a building, you need evidence rooms, there's a lot more to that than just having a chief and someone to operate. It's the facility and the infrastructure that goes along with it. So I talked to John about this a little bit, and I think this is a big undertaking that needs to be done by a group that can have the time and the ability to bring it through. I mean, we've talked about looking at this, about organizing. We've always talked about this, but there's a number of reasons, and it's nobody's fault. It's just been a series of things that have happened. So I would ask the board to ask the Strategic Planning Commission to take on a project of this magnitude for long-range planning, financial planning, and it'll mean having to evaluate properties, potential grand list increases if you were to have the bonds for it, and what it might look like at that level.
Yeah, and we would bring in experts. I mean, we're good, but we're not perfect. So we would talk to developers and real estate people that Justin would introduce us to, and other people who are expert in these areas. But our job is to do the research, accumulate the information, and then present the information. So, we're not a standalone expert group by any stretch of the imagination, but we are good at digging in, cataloging, documenting, and presenting. That's our strength.
So so that's for, I guess, for the board's consumption. It's a little bit, I think it's bigger than bigger than we really thought. But I'm just afraid that down the road, in 10 years, if we don't have a plan, we may find out that we should have, and now we're kind of, and if the market is right and things are right, time to possibly do that.
Yep. You got to start sometime.
Right.
And I've, like you, I've heard about this for a very, very long time, but I've never seen any activity on it. It's, we talk about it privately, but who's working on it? Nobody.
So, anything from the,
Do we need a motion to approve these 5 new?
Well, let me go back so you remember what the 5 are, because I went through it pretty quick. Those are the 5. Now, once again, if you guys are here every day working on the future of our town, Jeff's already made his comments, but if you have a priority that you really want us to think about or propose, in addition to anything that we've presented, this is the time to tell us.
Let's make a motion. I'll make the motion to approve the 5. Somebody can second it, and then we can have that discussion.
Have a discussion?
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah, go ahead.
made and seconded, any discussion?
One comment. Oh, go ahead, Emily. Emily first, I'm sorry, because I talk to these people a lot, so.
It seems like talking about a municipal campus fits nicely under, and I think these are, best use of town-owned properties, so I think that's kind of already in here. But when we talk about having an independent police department, that's something new. Unless I'm kind of missing how you might fit that under this, are you prepared to take on a 6th priority, or are you going to put this under emergency responses?
Yeah, I think it's in there because in talking with Jeff, because he brought that up in our discussion, I think it fits within the priority candidates that we're talking about.
Because from my perspective, when I'm looking at this and how you have it outlined, it's looking at lessons learned and preparing for things that have happened, not so much just the focus on the police department. So I almost think that this is a 6th item based on what you've presented, and I might look at it that way so that this stays kind of different from lessons learned to a totally separate topic. That would be my recommendation.
So one of my comments is, so as I look at, if you go to the page before this, the 10 that you were looking at?
Oh, yeah, hold on.
So the second from the bottom, survey and review non-medical public safety needs, one of those, 103, 104, one of those is review of independent police force. So before we get into the discussion of what we want the priorities to be, can you talk a little bit about how you got from this list of 10 to the 5? And one thing that I'm interested in hearing about is, as I look at the list of 10, I see a lot of things, such as the one I just mentioned, that include items that are in the strategic plan. Also, the development of master arts plan, that's in this plan. Volunteerism, and that talks about trying to get more unaffiliated voters on our boards and commissions and whatnot.
Yep.
All of that sort of stuff is in the strategic plan already. Everything on this chart with number 106 forward are things that are not in the current strategic plan as I understand it.
Correct.
So I'd like to understand how we got, like what process you went through to get from this list of 10 down to the 5, and then whether perhaps we can take a closer look at some of these items below the 106, like the police and whatnot, and
Sure.
maybe reorganize some of the priorities.
Yeah, one premise from the beginning was that the plan is a living document, so it can be reviewed. What we did at the commission level is we reviewed the plan and we said, are there any other things that in 2018 we were not aware of, and we're now into 2021. So 3 years have passed. What do we know today that we didn't know 3 years ago? So we did, within our own commission, we did a straw poll, and we came up with some additional items, which we've included in the categories that you see over there on the right-hand side. How we got from 10 to 5 is we felt, once again, we didn't want to present you with 10, so we said, let's prioritize it. So we did an internal ranking. I didn't want to show you the ranking because then you'd say, well, why is this number 3 and not number 1? Or so it didn't matter. So we took the 10 to give you the first 5 based on our internal ranking. So this is our best effort. If there's an alternate, if somebody has a better idea, we're happy to look at it and consider it.
Mike?
So,
Mike?
a lot of the, one of my concerns about adding on to the charge of this group and making sort of a master plan for the town of Southbury as sort of its own thing is that in and of itself is a full-time, long-term initiative. And a lot of these are tied together, actually. So I'm gonna get up because it's easier.
Sure.
And I talk loud, so I don't need the mic.
Don't we have a pointer?
Oh, yeah, I don't know, yeah, I just think John probably has it, but if I look at this list, the IT technology infrastructure for the town, the master plan for the use of town-owned properties, I'd add in the addressing sustainability, transportation, the emergency and the non-medical public safety needs, and town governance options are all very closely related. And I'm wondering if there's a way that a subgroup of the committee just focuses on those that will allow more to get done. That's one of my, it's such a massive thing to look at this, all of Main Street, all the town-owned properties on Main Street around to Peter Road. That then includes, we're gonna be looking at the transfer station. You have to then look at the 600 other some odd town-owned properties as you're doing that inventory to know where they are, to see what we already own that might become.
Well, if they're under 2
property.
acres, we
Yeah.
we set them aside.
But then we have to figure out what to do with them, and some of that's town-owned property for preservation and conservation.
Right.
But I'm just trying to figure out, rather than looking at these as each individual tactical things, is there a way to group together items that would be a master plan for the town of Southbury? That take into account, and just to me, these are all, we're looking at it very tactically as this, and I'd rather than group the related tactics together into what are the master plan things.
Well, the strategic plan included all of this.
Right.
What we're trying to do is eat the elephant one bite at a time.
Mm-hmm.
If,
But
if,
a master plan is like, you know, the main course. So, that's my.
maybe we
concern.
need more people on the commission.
No, that's
I
my
don't know.
concern. I don't think it's fair.
A lot of them
actually,
are
to
here
overburden
tonight.
The committee to do that, and I'd be curious of the committee's sort of perspective on that, the members of the committee, but there are a lot of interrelated things here, you know, to me, in my mind, and how do you approach them in a way where you'll be able to move the chains down the field, you know?
I don't see anybody wanting to help me here. Oh, Fred, come
I
on.
think the only comment that I'd make just within that list that you've made, Mike, is survey and review emergency medical needs. I think that would be something that would fall under our EMS committee.
It might, yeah,
more.
absolutely.
And by the way, we may find that out because we haven't really talked to a lot of these people, and we may be able to boom, 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 take care of it. This is Fred Sell. He is a relatively new guy, but a very important and impressive young man. Go ahead.
I can see that part of the problem here that you're addressing is how do we
Fred, try to talk into the mic.
how do we get organized? And I think one of the first steps for this commission would be to take a look at this and try to plan an attack. Okay, and come back to you and say, okay, we've considered your comments, we've looked at the priorities that we've laid out, and here's how we'd like to approach it in a systematic way so over a period of time you can build the kind of master plan that you're looking for. I mean, that to me is the immediate task ahead of us, is to come up with a sensible approach, which is the question you're begging.
Because I think the point you make, Jeff, is very worthy, and it makes sense, and it takes a lot of these tactical things and sort of says, here's the biggest thing above here. So,
I think that's where, in my perspective, I look at it and say things like, and not that any of these are small tasks, but like IT is probably something that can be addressed more quickly than looking at our entire Main Street, comparatively speaking. And so that's where I kind of appreciate this, you know, 5 or potentially 6-prong approach and getting to have experts on each of the different areas and taking it off that one bite at a time approach. I don't see an issue with kind of this setup, but I appreciate where you're coming from, Mike.
So I agree, there's things we can get done, but if we don't start the wheels in motion.
Exactly.
And I certainly, a master plan, long range, I wouldn't even expect that in a year. But my feeling is, and Justin and I have talked about this, you know, where is the town gonna be? It could be after we're gone,
A lot
way
of this
or
will
the
be
other.
after we're all gone,
we're all
yes.
gone. And they'll look back and say,
I'd like to still be.
You're very young, yes.
but this is what Southbury always has done, and at least if it's being looked at, and before and I talked to Justin about this when we were talking about commercial properties in town, and him and I were talking about Volpe Rosen, and then we were talking about Exit 15, and I brought this concept to Justin. I said, you know, let's think about this before we open that up and do this. And that's why we didn't really pursue that part of it. Because we also know that that was their purchase to protect the town from liability if someone was to build that out. That's the original reason they bought that Exit 15 property. So for us to be there, you know, so that's why I brought it forward. And I realize it's a big undertaking, but if we don't start biting at the elephant, it'll never get eaten.
are there elements of the 10, right, that you took from, the 40 that were left, that all you're saying, develop master plan for arts and culture, there were more points within the strategic plan that were tied to that. There were 9 or 10 than any of the others. And I agree. I think the 5 that you've prioritized make the most sense from what you've presented in that document we have here and what you presented up there. It is part of the work just to say, hey, the master plan for arts and culture
is not gonna be, we're gonna move that to the EDC. Because at the end of the day, arts and culture is all about economic development. It's about the social fabric of a town, but it's also, there's known, and you sent a note, I think, about it, there's plenty of research that arts and culture drive economic growth and opportunity because it makes it a place that people wanna be and come, and it becomes a more vibrant community. So are things like, to Emily's point, survey and review emergency medical needs, does the strategic plan, their recommendation is, that needs to be a priority of the emergency, the Ems Commission, right? And that's your recommendation, and you're done with that. You check that off the list and you.
Yeah, and that's not on the chart, but within the commission, we're bringing in people from the Pomperaug Health Department, Pomperaug River Water, the LEPC. We're going to be talking to these people, including Kevin. Kevin was the head of Arts and Culture in New Milford, as you know. And if somebody comes and speaks to us and says, hey, we'll take that under our wing, we're more than pleased to give them that opportunity. We'll keep in touch with them and help them. But we're not the only people working on this. The reason we got 66% of the plan done is because the town has begun working on all of this stuff. And in many cases, these things were underway even before the survey took place, but the community didn't know about it. So this is an education process. A lot of good things were going on.
And that would be my only question that feeds off of it, and what I thought in reviewing these is like Southbury IT, and George, I'd be interested in your perspective on this as sitting on both strategic planning and IT. Is that something that our IT steering committee should be tackling? And then it keeps strategic plan focused on those kind of more independent, long range opportunities.
We're gonna talk to them. Yep.
But I think more than just talk to them, it's actually working with it. So I think of like emergency my EMS committee, I constantly say this, I am just absolutely continuously impressed with their lack of knowledge within EMS. So rather than just talking with them, is it more that this falls under the EMS committee and maybe someone from strategic plan kind of liaises on that one subset? I could think of that for the IT committee as well on this priority for communication and technology. And that was just a thought that I had, is rather than trying to rework kind of the experts in the field, and then it keeps you guys focused on things that aren't covered by some of our committees and commissions.
I think you're exactly right. The pandemic sort of locked us up. So we couldn't go out and talk to all these people that we would love to have talked to. Now that we're unmasked, we would love to engage all of these people because they're the experts in these areas. We're not the experts. We're the inquiring minds, okay? We're the guys that want the answers. Do we have the answers? No, but we want them. So we're willing to be the catalyst in that area. Go ahead.
I'd like to make go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I had a similar comment as to, we've talked about a couple different things on the list, and the same thing can be said of the, lessons learned in emergency management. Like we now, our emergency management system has shifted in this town dramatically over the last year.
Yes.
We now have a full-time emergency management director, so things are going to be different going forward than they were looking backwards.
Exactly.
So that's another thing where that person is going, like that's his job to do, these sorts of things. So one of my thoughts is sort of an overall, as we're looking at this and trying to determine priorities, is whether before the Board of Selectmen approves priorities, is whether you guys should take the next couple of months having all of these conversations that you haven't been able to have. Go meet with the IT committee and our IT director, meet with the emergency management director, meet with the EMS committee, do those things, because that may narrow the list, so then we can refocus on, because you may say, you know what, of these top 5, a couple of them perhaps are outside your purview, and then that really opens up for us more that we can ask you to do. And I think that might be a better use of time on the front end right here, just to spend a little time doing that analysis, and then we can refocus on, these are the big projects we want to do, whether it be master plan, police department. I've always looked at police department as something that would probably take a year in and of itself of a dedicated committee. and maybe your committee is the committee to do that, so we'd also want to hear about how you would tackle it, you know, what you would do, what the aspects.
We've got 10 people on the commission. The way we've worked in the past is we break up into teams. So we don't all work on one thing. We worked on 5 things by putting 2 people on each of the 5 items. And I have no problem with that approach. I'm interested in hearing George and
Yeah, I just think
And
that
Mike.
what's interesting about that, I think you may find out that 66%, which you were pleased
it
with,
may be
might be
75.
75%.
I would be
Right,
thrilled.
it might be 75%, and it'll allow, to Jason's point, will allow you to then say, yeah, we're gonna prioritize the big strategic plan, master plan things.
That's where I think this
Yeah.
kind of, like, I think Jason and I are on the same wavelength here in thoughts, and it plays into what Mike was saying earlier. You know, rather than just having these other things like the EMS needs, we can, you know, work that out to the EMS committee. Arts and culture, we can put that over to EDC, and I could see you guys going and doing a presentation at these committees to inform them of the work that you've been doing. Here's some opportunities how they can get involved as experts in their own fields, and then us focusing you all on really kind of those bigger, heavy-hitting items that are gonna take a long time to work through and no one else is covering. And that's what I think of when I think of strategic planning.
Okay, George, do you want to say something?
Well, first, John and your group, I want to thank you guys for doing, and gals, for doing the hell of the work that you've done. I mean, you've done a lot of heavy lifting, spent a lot of time. I've seen emails going back and forth, and I've learned a lot from you folks through the research you've done. So thank you on behalf of the
thank you.
town and this board for everything you've done. Getting to some minor points, I think I have asked the IT steering group to look at working on cell mobile coverage and also doing a survey of the town's broadband capabilities. And they really have backed away from it. They want to limit their role to providing guidance to the IT director in town. So I don't think they're looking to expand the work they do. These folks are, so I think if you want to do an IT kind of, or a cell mobile coverage task study, I think you guys would be more willing and able and have the time to do it.
Well, we're happy to, as suggested, talk to the people involved.
Oh, yeah, you
And
can certainly
See where the gaps
and
are.
see-
coordinate with
yeah,
them, but
the-
I've asked the IT steering folks to do those sorts of things already, and they kind of
Well, I
said they
think-
really weren't interested.
So after those discussions, IT may stay on the list, but
Yeah.
other
Right.
things may come
Yeah.
off the list, and
Yep.
then we can really, you know, have a pared down list that we could say, you know what, these are the things Southbury really wants to look at for our long-range planning over the next
Yeah,
number of years. And I'll just echo George's comments, because every time you guys come here, it's impressive, and it's helpful, and we all learn something new. And John keeps us well informed of everything that's going on with the Strategic Plan Commission. So I thank you all for your service and your time and, you know, everything
thank
you've
you.
put into this.
Yeah, and I mean, I get to read all the minutes every time, so it's nice to get those directly and be able to read through it. But I think that the important thing for me too is if we had, as we had, it sounds like in this direction, that we don't have to drop a lot of what those 10 priorities were that didn't get included in the 5. And that's the benefit to me as well, is that there's more going on, more being tackled. And so that's a benefit for Southbury overall.
Okay.
George wasn't done.
Yeah, I had one more point. Again, getting down into the details a little bit, but I don't think that we're quite finished with our research, or I should say your research into the community center options. I had a discussion with one of your members last week or so, and he was still interested in pursuing that.
Yeah, there's 2 open items. One is the senior needs issue is still open. We've not made that presentation to the board. And the other one is the community center.
Okay, so
So
that's
those are
not
2
being
open.
dropped off the list if you take
No.
those other things.
They're on the
Those are the
list.
first
They were
priorities.
covered, yeah.
So when we say
good.
too, I mean, I think of the training school, we sent those questions up to the state. We haven't heard anything back yet, so I'm not sure that is there any one thing that's just closed
Yeah,
and
no-
done?
no-
I don't think we've checked anything or crossed it
Nothing's off our list.
Yes.
What we talked about was progress.
Yep,
Government in general, and in Connecticut especially, moves at a certain pace. And we understand that, and we're not being critical. We appreciate it and we respect it. But Our job was to bring it up and have it be addressed, and you've done that. So, you know, we're happy with
No, and
that.
the last thing I'd say, I just look to you, once you have, you know, I think it is a good idea, once you have had those conversations.
Yep.
If you guys don't feel, if your committee doesn't feel that adequate progress is being made, then you should come back to us and say, you know, we think we need to keep this, because somebody needs to keep
Okay.
pushing this forward, and it's not happening.
Okay.
And we're not, or we feel that they've, you know, based on the strategic plan and priorities, we feel that this is covered now, actually, and we could take this off our plate. We'll check in with them every so often, because part of your job is
Just
to
monitor
build that
it,
whole
yeah.
list. But, you know, I think that makes total sense, and again, we'll all echo it. I mean, you know, this is the most important work the town does in many ways.
Good.
And,
Thank you.
Incredibly grateful. So.
Well, we've got a tremendous team of very intelligent, qualified people, so thank you.
I
John,
think,
Thank
too-
you for your service to Southbury.
I-
It's tremendous.
I think too, John, you've got some of this started, and I would call, they could say, low-hanging fruit. I think now you're gonna get deeper in, that's gonna take more time
Yep.
going forward. I gave you, the meeting, a lot to think about strategically, long range.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be everything from communications up there, municipal center, it could be a
Yep.
number of things. So,
Yep.
you know, but again, we have our strategic plan, our short-range stuff, but there are some long-range concerns that we really need to, you know, I've talked with Kevin Bielmeyer about that, even to the point where you take Public Works right off of where they are and move it. Now, that would probably be a long time from now. But sooner or later, we have to, a lot of municipalities are saying, geez, this facility is just not working for the way we
Needs.
operate
Right.
today. And it's inefficient, and it's causing us difficulty. And I really would not like to leave that for the next generation to stumble upon and have to deal with, if we can do a long-range plan on it.
Right.
So
Okay.
I believe what I'm hearing, you'll come back. Once you-
I'm more than thrilled with the feedback that we've gotten. We thought that by the way, we didn't want to give up any of these 10. I mean, we just figured if we hit you with 10, you'd say, oh my God. But to the opposite, we gave you 5 and you said, no, we want the 10, which is wonderful. And we will go back, we'll talk to the appropriate people, we'll do some more research, we'll see if we can get more people working on this, and then we'll report back to you.
I wouldn't be opposed if you folks needed more people. I mean, I guess it becomes unmanageable at some point, but if you get to a point where you're looking at all the work and I just can't get it all done, I mean, come back and we
Okay,
can certainly consider that.
Especially if there's certain areas of expertise that you feel there's a gap. One of us may know someone, where we could spread the word that we're looking for, especially if there's a specific expertise, because a lot of these require.
we could do more if you doubled our budget.
Yeah, 2 times 0 is still 0.
Yeah.
I think we can do that, John.
Okay, all right, well, thank you for the time and the attention.
We have a
Yep, there's
motion.
still a
Oh,
motion on
there's
the
a
floor.
motion?
We made a motion, seconded.
You withdraw the
I'll
motion.
withdraw the motion if that's okay. Do we have to second a withdrawal
No.
or?
No.
No.
Motion withdraw, and
Thank you, everybody.
we'll accept that, and thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
Thanks, John, and all members of the committee.
You can take that off the screen, and thank you very much.
Okay.
Nice for everybody to come out.
Okay. Next up is public comments, limited to 2 minutes. Please let us know who you are if you'd like to make a public comment, and you'll have 2 minutes. Any public comment? Any public comment?
Yes, I have one. Eric Wyka, and it pertains to affordable housing. And it's very short, sweet, and simple. If you can not afford to live in Southbury, you don't live in Southbury. Go to Torrington. I'm very sorry, but that's the way I feel. I've seen economic development, having been raised in Westchester County in New York. I don't personally want to see apartments in Southbury. I don't want to see high-rise buildings. I don't want to see the rural character of Southbury compromised. And I think a lot of the people who write these LTEs really have too much time on their hands. And if you don't enjoy living in Southbury, go back to New York. Go back to an urban center. That's sincere.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Okay.
Hi, Catherine Smith from Strategic Planning. I just wanted to address your comment about the affordable housing.
Please address the board.
Oh, sure. So I just wanted to make a comment about affordable housing. The board has been very kind to let us talk and discuss our findings regarding affordable housing. And I think with our conversation regarding affordable housing, if anyone has anything additional to add, please do. But I think what we're looking at affordable housing is not to develop high-rises. I think what we're truly looking for is to create some units that would be at a more affordable price, so not Section 8 housing, but specifically like some of the condominiums that we have, like small, we're looking at a small start in small spots to allow people that are teachers and or nurses, fire department, police department, people who have salaries that are in just normal middle class range, to allow them the affordability of living here in Southbury. So we're not looking at having large complexes. What instead we're looking at is gradual growth, but growth would afford people, that are employees in our community to live in the community where they serve.
Thank you. Any other public comment? I'm sorry. No,
Yes,
yeah,
been there, done that. I've seen it happen.
Sir,
It's a waste
only
of time.
one, please. Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on. Thank you. Announcements and correspondence. You saw the Selectmen's update, July programs at the library. We'll move on to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
Made and seconded. Mike seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions, and it carries. Job descriptions, recreation supervisor and zoning,
That was part of the consent agenda.
I'm sorry?
That was part of the
Oh, it
consent
was.
agenda.
You're right. Okay. Minutes of June 17th, 2021, regular meeting.
Motion to approve?
Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It carries. Unfinished business, Edgewood Ballantyne Pool discussion. We'll open it up if there's any thoughts. I have been on the Ballantyne Pool. I've been thinking about this, and I think the board may want to consider forming another task force or group, maybe a smaller group, to look into the Ballantyne Pool, the cost of construction, and what that might mean or cost. We're hearing a lot of things. We have reached out to Middletown for some questions and to a number of people at Middletown, and so far we have not gotten any answers back. I called Mike to tell him that. We are working and making phone calls and waiting for responses, and so far we have not, and we're going to continue to pursue the question of what does it mean at that $2 million pool. But I think at this point we should have some sort of a group together that could dig down deeper into Ballantyne Pool, what it would cost truly, because we have, George, we've had estimates. We've sat, we've listened, we've been through this, but I think it may be a good idea to have some different people look at it. Frankly, I would, many years ago, I brought couple years ago, I brought up the Edgewood. I intentionally brought it up after an election, only because I didn't want it to become political. This is something that should not be made political. It should be thoroughly thought out, and maybe it's a good time to have some different sets of eyes on it. Anybody else have any thoughts on this?
Just to kind of review the cost estimates we've had already on building a pool at Ballantyne. We've had 3 different companies give us estimates, and again, these are not locked down cost estimates because we didn't spend the money to get the design done, which would have been very expensive. But we had Weston and Sampson, Aquatectonic, and there was one other company, and I just can't remember who they were. But these are all very reputable companies with established reputations in building municipal pools. It's not easy to build a municipal pool. I know some folks think you can just build them like backyard pools and it shouldn't cost $1 million, but it's not like that. We also had a pool inspector. I can't remember his name, but he's one of the top pool builders in the Northeast, maybe the top pool builder. And he was the fellow that we brought in to inspect the pool at Edgewood. And we had conversations with him, and he agreed that the estimates we had were in line with the projects that he's done. And Hugh Sullivan, who he was the architect at Edgewood building their pool. He brought in one of his contacts from Pennsylvania, another very experienced pool builder, or an architect who works for a company that mainly does pools. And they also verified that our numbers were real, and we weren't really off the mark. I mean, it came in to be about a $4 million project. If someone wants to go back out and research the numbers again, go ahead. We have some time. But I'm pretty comfortable with the numbers we had, and I don't think you're gonna see anything different if you go back out and work with, the people that do this for a living. I don't know what Middletown is talking about as far as $2 million. I don't understand how that's possible. I don't think our Public Works group here in town is gonna be able to do any kind of a pool project. I think they're stretched as it is now to get the work done that we're asking them to do. They have, they're challenged to meet that, and there's additional projects that we also want to put on them that is going to take up all their time. I don't think they have the skill sets either to do that kind of a construction. Another concern I have with, say, our Public Works people doing the work is if there's a problem, if there becomes a damage or liability issue, who are you going to go after? Are you going to go after your Public Works crew, or are you going to go after it becomes muddled. So I think a project like that shouldn't be undertaken as a joint responsibility between the town and a contractor. I think it should be a contractor, and then you know who's responsible if something goes wrong. But that's what I have to say. I mean, we spent a lot of time trying to get costs on the rebuild of a Ballantyne pool. One of the companies we did talk to, Aquatectonic, they're out of the White Plains area. They were cited in a Rep. Am article. I think they were talked about as in the article about rebuilding a pool. I think it was the Hamilton pool in Waterbury for like $1 million or $1.5 million, and people got excited about that. So we actually went out, and the group contacted, I think it was Tom Marks actually did the initial contact with Aquatectonic, and we got the same pool architect that looked at the Hamilton pool in Waterbury and gave them their numbers. And he told us that the numbers didn't include the site work and didn't include the apron around the pool and didn't include the bathhouse. So he said if they included all those numbers, that their cost would be very close to what we were. Now, it was a smaller pool in Hamilton, so it was a little less expensive, but So that's what I can tell you. If you want to go out and get more estimates, go ahead. Go.
Mike?
Yeah, so I think no one questions the work that was done by the folks on the Edwards Commission. They did a great job. They did exactly what we asked them to do when we approved the $3,000 option back in 2 Marches ago, I guess it was. Something
We
like
move
that.
slowly.
Yeah. So no one questions that. If I recall though, the range of the estimates that we got actually ranged from a smaller footprint pool that was about 2.6 million, I think it was, to 4.6 at the highest point.
There was no 2.6 million in the final estimates. The final estimates are on the website. I think the cheapest one was.
There was one under 3. There was one under 3.
No, I think if you look at the preliminary
Yeah.
numbers before
So-
we really nailed it down.
So I
But
would ask
the
that
biggest
we
question is
should
this.
Look at it.
It's not, Middletown is building a pool. They've publicly stated, it's in their minutes, just like we have meetings like this, that they are building a pool that is, I believe, a larger footprint than the one we had, with a bathhouse for $2 million. We have to, it's only been 2 weeks since we brought this up at the last meeting, so the fact that they haven't gotten back to us, government works at a slower pace. They're a big town. I've offered to the first selectman, I believe I have an in to the young mayor's office over in Middletown, Mayor Flershaw, and I'll try to see if I can help, because I know Dan Colton was trying to get information. I'll see if I could try to, get involved there. But if they are in fact doing it for $2 million,
I'd like to see the plans.
I want to see the plan. I want to see the plan. And for us to just say, well, we've got all these other plans, to me, isn't good enough. Plus, based on recent information that's been shared with the board on Edgewood, I don't believe those should be conversations we're even having anymore. We should be moving on from those, and we should be looking at what do we do with Ballantyne Pool and Ballantyne Park. And the SBC just reported on the community center as one of the unfinished pieces of work they're doing from the first priorities. And again, if we look big picture and we have some vision, could Ballantyne Park, right, be big enough? I don't know. I'm not an architect, right? I'm not an engineer. Be a place where we build something that could be it. Could it be Southbury Training School? But we have credible information that's been reported publicly that a pool's being built for $2 million. A town that's about twice the size of ours, a little more than that, right? Very well-run town, right? Well-run town, just like ours is. So let's find those numbers out. Whether or not we want to make a committee do that, I don't know. I think most municipalities are sort of committee happy, and we are a town that runs on volunteers, so it's great. I agree. I don't know if our Public Works Department has the wherewithal to do it, but we also now have a Public Works Director who has a deep background in construction and big projects like this. I'd like to find out what he thinks. I'd like to, and I just want to have facts before we just dismiss it out of hand. Because, yeah, the work was great, but there's a new piece of really big information in front of us.
So
I think-
that's exactly why.
Yeah. So whether we form, I'm fine with forming a committee if that's what we think is the best path, but.
I'd be more in favor of, let's give it, it hasn't even been a month yet.
Right.
I think let's just wait at this point, see what information we can get about Middletown, because I'd like to see the plan and who is doing the construction. Is it somebody, it could be like Hamilton Park, where it's somebody that we've already had a quote. We don't know. So I think for me, a little premature to go ahead and just form a new committee. I think our Edgewood committee did a tremendous job. They did a lot of research. So I think just give it a little bit more time, see what we can get back. And Mike, if you haven't tried yet,
Yeah,
there's a different-
Jeff and I spoke yesterday, I think it was,
Yeah.
so I haven't had a chance, and I moved
so I think
this
we'll
week,
give
so.
you some time, we'll give Dan some more time, and then see what we get back in our next meeting, and then go from there. That's my opinion.
Jason.
I think ultimately I think we're gonna have to have some sort of committee on Ballantyne, not just to look at costs, but also just to look at the whole thing, the whole package, and what the town wants to do going forward. And some of that might be working with the Strategic Plan Commission and on their priorities. But I agree. Like this Middletown thing is a mystery, And the plans are available. You can see them, and they're beautiful. So what we really need to understand is how you get from that price to those plans.
Right.
I think it makes sense to, wait out a little bit and see what information we could get from them. I also think it makes sense, I think, Mike did bring up a good point. We do have expertise with our new Public Works Director. I'm not saying for him to build a pool, but it would be good to get his insight, for him to go take a look and just give us his general thoughts on the matter as we continue these discussions.
Another person to talk to would be Hugh Sullivan. He's in town, he's helped us on a lot of other projects, been an invaluable resource, volunteering his time, and he did spend significant time working with the Edgewood Task Force, get his thoughts as well.
So Jerry is getting up to speed, and just for the record, that's why I wanted to bring it before the board for discussions to take a look at this. I don't want the board to think that after the discussion, we're trying to investigate, and I reached out to Mike to say, we're trying to get this, normally we would get an answer back that was pretty clear, but so far, we've struck out in every.
And all three, the three main companies are named in the story, so if the town doesn't give us stuff, we'll go straight, I'll call Dan, and I'm glad to try to help just get information.
Yeah, we're just trying to get information.
But to Emily's point, it's 2 weeks, and I think we have a little bit of time.
But I want to keep it on the table,
Yeah,
and we'll
keep
keep
moving.
discussing it,
Yeah, for sure.
and because no matter what we do or don't do, or whatever, we need to eventually, we know the pool's gonna fail.
Yep.
It's year to year, and we try to keep it, pieced together, and, so we'll keep on that
We see what happens when you
when we go forward, right? Everybody else set? Okay, goals for department heads. So I just want to let everyone know, months ago, we started, Dan Colton, Claire, my assistant and myself, we started working with our HR department. And we have met with department heads, and we've explained that what we're looking to do, what we're planning on doing is we have this year there's a regular raise, that's the normal thing we do. And we told department heads that we want to start doing evaluations of employees, self-evaluations, and we don't want to start doing it right now. We want them to start understanding we're going to do it, what it's going to take to do the evaluations. And in the year of fiscal year 2023, actually do the written evaluations. And HR is helping us to develop that. That's already been brought to the department heads, which will give them, it's a tool to help. What we're looking at is to identify weaknesses and areas of any employee, and a guideline of how we would improve their, whatever there needs to be an improvement on, and do an evaluation on that. So we're gonna work on that. Also, by town charter, when you look at it, it is the first selectman's job to do this, and it's not the board's job. So just to let the board know, we're going to be working towards those evals and come up with an evaluation system, performance, and that's mostly going to be internal. So anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Moving on to new business. Any new business?
Excuse me, I didn't think we were done with the goals, because I think the goals and performance evaluations are two completely different things. I mean, having goals for a department has really nothing to do with performance evaluations per se for individual employees. It's simply a way to make what the department is trying to accomplish in a given period transparent and visible for people to see. That's really the intent of that. and it isn't intended to take away any of your authority. It is simply asking for a way to look inside the machine and see what's going on and what the projects might be, what the goals are. I did read the list of comments from the department heads that was sent out after the last meeting, and I had a few comments. I think the questions that were posed in the survey weren't really accurately portraying the proposal that was put on the table. They were essentially asking different things, like saying that people would have to come here and present to the board their goals. No one ever said that. All we did is we wanted to see what the goals are, and that determining those goals is between you and the department heads. Another comment I would have is that some of the comments from the department heads were actually favorable toward goals. They were not particularly in favor of working for the Board of Selectmen. That was clear, but they didn't seem to have a problem with making goals in conjunction with the first selectman, which is really the proposal that we put on the table. Another comment I had reading that is there's one department out there that seems to have issues or seems to be a little bit, I don't know if you guys read the thing, but there was one department that just stood out, and I'd like to know, maybe you want to know as to what's going on with that department, why they're feeling like they're running from crisis to crisis. You know, it seems like if you look at management by exception and you see something like that, you say, well, that's where I want to focus my attention and see what's going on, what's the issue there. Yeah, my last comment is that I don't, as a manager, I don't necessarily get overly concerned when an employee says, oh, I don't really want to do that because it's too hard, or I just don't feel like doing it. I mean, if I'm the manager and I say, yeah, I mean, this is a good thing to be doing, we should do it, and I'd like you to take it on. That's, you know, that's the manager's call. In this case, that's your call. But I'm not overly concerned when an employee says, gee, I don't really want to do it because it's too much work. It's like asking a high school kid if he wants to do more homework. They're going to say no every time. Nobody really wants to write goals. It's kind of it's difficult. It forces you to sit down and think and focus your mind. And it's hard. It's a challenge. So those are the comments I had. I thought that's what we were going to talk about is continuation of that discussion, but it seems, I don't know if no one else wants to say anything.
I'll add one thing. You know, I was, in favor in the concept of it. We talked about it last time about, and I also read all the comments. I'm not surprised. I think there was some favorable comments too, by the way. I'm not surprised. You're right. I think the job of both, in this case, us as a board, but also of the first selectman, is to implement that type of work in the least onerous way possible on the staff, so it isn't, because nobody likes doing them. I've run companies, for a long time now. Nobody likes doing them. I don't like doing them to my boss, so no one likes them. That said, I would hope, while I agree, Judge, that a performance evaluation review process is not the same thing as goal setting for each department. You cannot have an effective, I'd hope at least when you're developing this process, you cannot have an effective performance evaluation process without goals being set. Because what are you measuring them against? What are you measuring that person against? It can't just be the opinion of a person. There has to be some markers, and I'd be hopeful that as you go through that process and figure out what that approach of evaluating performance is, that it's done in a way that first and foremost is fair to employees. Two, that is set in some basic mile marker. That would be some form of goal setting. And I'll wait to hear back. And I'll turn to you and wait to hear back on that front of where we end up on that with the HR folks on where we can set up, because I do think it would be valuable for us. And I'll tell you, as we go through future budget processes, I think that those are going to be questions that will be asked, because a lot of goal setting is on that, but there are, and Emily made the point, there are plenty of non-financial, goals for certain departments. I think we as a town focus a lot on the financial ones in general, and it's one of the reasons why we're fiscally sound. But I'll wait to hear what the HR folks say, but I would hope, I would assume at least, that some form of a performance evaluation process will have some form of goal setting in it, because how can you effectively do performance evaluation without understanding what were they supposed to be achieving?
Yeah, usually
And
done
that's
in tandem,
precisely why
yeah,
we're working with the
constant
HR
partnership.
department.
I'll wait to hear about that. But George, I think it was very worthwhile that you brought it up, and because I think it is a good way to measure progress and talent and, and impact.
I think it opened our eyes too at the last, sorry, Jason.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Opened our eyes at the last meeting too to some other concerns and issues and things that might need to be addressed as well. So for that, I think it was absolutely beneficial, nothing else.
I just want to clarify one thing with you, George, because there's been confusion as to exactly what the proposal was, and the first thing you said with your comments tonight was you wanted to make it transparent for people to see. What do you mean by that?
Well, I assume that departments have goals, even if they're not written down, so you can see them. I think it would be nice and beneficial and prudent for us to make those goals visible and let people see what they are. And maybe we don't have them. Maybe we just haven't given it a lot of thought. So maybe that's part of it, is that people haven't really sat down and figured, well, what am I trying to accomplish over the next 12 months? So they don't have a clearly codified list even in their minds. That's what I mean. I mean, we spend, our tax dollars on running these departments and hiring people, and we like to think that they're doing good and wonderful things. In most cases they are. But that's the sort of transparency that I'm talking about, is just the ability to see what a particular department is trying to accomplish. And at the end of the period, did they accomplish it? Or, if not, why not? And I'm not blaming anybody for any particular shortcoming. If they don't achieve a goal, there could be any number of reasons why that happens. Doesn't necessarily mean the person is gonna get their bonus docked. Of course, nobody gets a bonus, but I don't know, does that answer your question, Jason?
Well, when you say, who are the people you're talking about? Like, so the concern that I had when you first explained the proposal was not the proposal itself. I think we've all thought this has been a productive conversation to have and continue having, and it's nice to hear what HR is working on and, what steps we're gonna take going forward. But the concern I had, and from the survey, the concern I believe a lot of the town employees had, was what role you see the Board of Selectmen here, because I see that as this is a function of the first selectman, and I would be concerned about the Board of Selectmen micromanaging employees.
I have never, ever said that the Board of Selectmen would micromanage these goals. We would simply see them, just like a citizen in town would see them. That's the only thing I've ever said. I've never wanted to put the Board of Selectmen in the process of managing town employees. That is clearly a problem. I've never proposed that.
So the goals would be, like, obviously, they would be reported to the first selectman. There'd be goals set in tandem, and there would be evaluations based on that. I get all that. But are you also saying then that the goals are gonna be like posted on the website for each town department for the public to come in and evaluate performance
I
of
would
town
think
employees?
that's appropriate. I mean, it's not, yeah, I would think so. I mean, you don't necessarily have to post it on the town website, but at least the Board of Selectmen should be able to see it. And if it was up to me, yeah, I would post them on the town website. I've seen other towns do similar things. It's not.
I'd be interested in seeing that.
outrageous.
Can you provide us websites and I'd be interested in seeing what other towns.
I'd like to
done
see
that
that, yeah.
if they've done that, because it concerns me that the general topic doesn't concern me. What concerns me is town employees reporting to the board or member of the public just, evaluating performance, when we really want to not politicize town employment, and we just need to be careful about that. I'm not saying that's what you're proposing. I'm just thinking down the line of the impact on the town employee, and I just want to be very careful about what it is we're talking about. That's why I'm trying to understand it. In each meeting, I've asked questions trying to flush it out, because I'm not,
I don't think
I think
I've
it's a, you know,
ever
a
changed
worthwhile
my,
topic.
my explanation on it. I simply would like the board to be able to see what the goals are. And I've never tried to impose the will of the Board of Selectmen into that process. Never have I ever said that. It's a very simple request. If we choose not to post these kinds of goals online for people to see, we can make that choice. But I think at least the board should be able to see what the goals are.
I don't think we can, that would not be transparent if we were to do that.
Well, I
would be-
agree, I'd post it online, let everybody
You know,
see it, but
so
I'm
it's-
getting
it-
blowback here, so I'm trying to deal with that.
And
no,
there,
I'm trying to clarify, it's not, look, it's, it's trying to
Well, what is
understand
it,
the process.
what is it that I don't explain properly?
You're
I do
explaining it
think
now,
that there
and-
can be some things, and maybe this is, help kind of, Jason, get your point across if I'm saying it wrong. There could be, where I see it, some things that department heads may set as goals that may be of a sensitive nature. I don't know, could deal with personnel matters, who knows? Just using that as one example. That's not something that we maybe want to be posting on a website. I could see where that might not be in the best situation possibly. But I'm for transparency, that's not to say that, but I could see where some goals may be of a sensitive nature.
So I'd like to see the examples of other towns, that'd be helpful to understand.
That would be
these
helpful,
other towns
yeah.
that do this.
George, if you can send it, when you get them, you can send them to me.
And I look forward to hearing more in the coming months from the
Yeah,
HR.
we will.
People and what's being proposed and how we're implementing these processes.
I mean, another concern, I mean, I listened to Dan Colton talk at the last meeting, and he seems to indicate, now, I don't know what people get for annual increases in their salary, but he seemed to indicate that people, whether they do a great job or whether they don't do a great job, are getting the same raise. Now, is that true? I mean, I
That's
don't-
true.
That's a little bit concerning to
We're trying
somebody
to,
could
we're working on that, George, through the performance evaluation, which we hope to have implemented in 2023. That's just what I had brought forward. It's too soon to do it this year. And we've spoken to the department heads to explain what we're looking to do. We're working with HR to come up with a plan and a program for that. That's why this is what's helpful about having an HR department. Like, we have not had that in the past. And the good thing about the person who's currently with us, assigned to us, is they were in HR in Waterbury municipal setting. So it brings a lot more understanding of the challenges of HR within a municipal setting versus a private setting, which has been extremely helpful, which has worked out well. So there'll be more to come on that. Any other discussion? Anything under new business? Hearing none. First Selectmen's report. Asking the Board of Selectmen if it would be okay to cancel August 19th regular meeting. If we were to need a special meeting, we could set the special meeting. Betsy will be not here. So it would make
Pretty
things.
much that means the entire town is shut down, because
It does.
we all know
It
that.
does.
We all know that.
But if we have, I mean, I don't think it's that, that would make a little bit easier. And of course, if there's a real need or whatever, we can call a special meeting for that specific need. So with the board's approval, do we need a motion on that?
I think you could just cancel it.
Yeah, I think you just.
Okay. I'll put it out that the August 19th will be canceled unless we need a special meeting. Good news, the Southbury celebration will be taking place. I think I might have said that before, but they did have their first meeting, and the Monday has been encumbered for the fireworks. So we're gonna have fireworks and a celebration, and frankly, you know, we look forward to those things now. We don't realize how much we do miss, and that's a wonderful, not because my mother helped start it, but in her memory, it is a wonderful thing, and it is, we're looking forward to it. The Tax Incentive Task Force has had their first meeting. I hope you were,
I was there.
and we will, it was a little quick to get here, but on this agenda, but we will have, expect on our next agenda, a discussion, that I think you'll be very pleased with. Sustainable Southbury, is working on Sustainable Connecticut certification, which is a great thing. Moving forward with that. The new fiscal year opened up today, so the purchase orders, yeah, our pockets are full again, we're ready to go. So this has been good. There's been some encumbered purchase orders for specific things to get done. Land use is currently looking into regulations or moratorium on the cannabis legalization that's coming. And they'll be working on that, and they're gonna engage some legal advice on that and figure out what they're gonna do. The memo, I will have the memo for and the town attorney is away on vacation. The memo on the issues of flying a flag other than the flag of the US or the Connecticut flag, and we'll mull that over, and we'll have our town attorney available to discuss with us, you know, at that time so we can understand it. I do want to mention the retirement of a employee that is dear to me for my 18 years on inland wetlands and the wonderful job that she did. Carolyn Cardello has retired after many years of service to the town. We wish her well in her retirement, and she served as the wetlands secretary and did a tremendous job over many years. And Carolyn, if you are taking the time to listen to this meeting, we do appreciate that, but she had a lot of knowledge. The good news is I'm sure that we reach out to her. She will be more than happy to help us. Could we have reports from liaisons? George?
Not a lot of meetings in the past couple of weeks. In fact, I don't think there were any. As we saw tonight, the SPC did their presentation. I'm not going to go into that. We've talked about that enough. I would note that their number one task per the ranked vote tally that they did was the review of Southbury's broadband, mobile, cellular, and communications and that sort of thing. We currently do have a very small mobile cellular task force, and it hasn't really made much progress in recent months. And I'm encouraged that perhaps this SPC involvement will spur that effort, because I do think it's important. I've seen that other towns have also acknowledged that they're focusing on their broadband and their cellular mobile capabilities, and they're considering it as critical infrastructure, much like the electrical power grid. And they're starting to include it in their thinking. And I believe we can find ways to work with the broadband and cellular providers in our area to upgrade and improve things without spending a lot of taxpayer money. We'll see how that plays out. The questions that were sent to the state government related to STS, I did review that with a couple of our state reps, and they didn't have any insight yet. They haven't heard anything. One of their comments was that they would rather, and this may be something for future reference when we send these things out, they would rather if the questions were sent by the town to them directly, as opposed to the town sending it to whoever it went in the state, because it kind of took them out of the loop a little bit, and it makes them a little more difficult for them to inject themselves back into the process. Just a comment about how that was done. There was a comment at the last meeting. I did mention the name of a citizen in town, and I'm a little confused because that particular citizen is actually a member of the SPC. This was an SPC member. They're not an official member, but they are considered an ambassador. And I was kind of taken to task for mentioning the name. I don't know what the rules are in regards to mentioning names. We don't have any written set of rules for things like that. So I don't know if I want to waste money on a town, I wouldn't say waste, but spend money on a town attorney to review this thing. But I would like to know what it is that you can say. Can you mention the name of a citizen at this meeting? Is it verboten? And what about the name of somebody on a commission, like this particular person was? Is it okay to mention their name? Which gets into a bigger question, and I don't know if Emily wants me to mention this or not, but.
George, I think this is reports from liaisons. That's what
Well,
we're
kind of
asking
one
for
thing
here.
leads to another. I mean, if you don't want me to talk about it, I won't.
If you have reports from liaisons is what
Well,
we're,
it's a report because, it gets into the issue of me being criticized for mentioning a name. And my question is, do we have rules? I mean, do we have any written rules that someone could read and say, oh, that's how you should do things? We have some rules that are, we kind of use them.
Mike,
It's up to,
I should,
yeah, it's up to you. I'm the one who brought it up. I wasn't criticizing George, by the way. You and personally, I didn't believe there was any malicious intent there. We just, as a practice, haven't mentioned individuals by name. He's not on the commission the individual is not currently serving on a commission. But I think your point is good. One, I think we can review Robert's rules to see if it mentions it. I don't think any of us are true experts in it. I have the book at home, so I'll check when I go home. But I also don't think that it comes up that often in general. I think that just as we don't ask people giving public comment to comment from other people's public comment directly, I think we should speak each other's names, and just be respectful. It wasn't, I didn't think what you said was malicious. It was just
No, it was not.
common practice.
okay, I'm gonna rule, this is out of order. This
Okay.
is reports from
And
liaisons.
I'm fine with that.
And I'd like to move on with the reports from liaisons. Anything else, George?
The Energy Task Force did not have a meeting, but I did forward some questions to Dan Colton about data for the Portfolio Manager software package. I don't know if Dan's had a chance to answer those or not. I know he's a busy guy. Portfolio Manager is a software package that's run by the Eversource people, but the data is populated into the database by people at UConn. If we can give them the information they need, and in this case, it was mostly meter numbers. If they have a meter number, like for an electric meter or a gas meter, they can pull that data directly from the web. The town doesn't have to get involved, so that's what I was doing there. Radio refresh, nothing going on. IT steering, I did talk about insurance costs jumping, and because of cyber threats and risks are just going through the roof. I thought the costs would maybe double, but according to Dan Colton, the quotes we're seeing are 5 or 6 times higher than what we were paying. And it just is a measure of how much the risks have increased and also how much the costs of the ransom have gone up. And that's it. I don't have anything else.
Okay, Selectman Betty.
Economic Development, IPOC, and Senior Commission have not met since our last meeting, but the Tax Incentive Task Force did have their first meeting last night. Very interesting, very good group of people, a lot of different, a lot of knowledge coming from different and useful directions. And what we're gonna hear about in 2 weeks is, I think, very exciting. needs to be somewhat under wraps for now. It's a Connecticut manufacturer looking to expand. They are experiencing rapid growth in an industry that clearly is going to continue to experience rapid growth. And they're negotiating with a landlord here in town. And they reached out to Kevin about this very thing. So I look forward to us chatting about it next time. I don't know if that'll have to be an executive session or not. I'm sure
It will be.
we'll figure that out by then. But yeah, it seemed like it would be. But it's very exciting, and I think it just shows how needed and timely having some sort of tax incentive program is. So that's it.
Selectman Bucksbaum.
None of those committees met, but I'm also a member of the Connecticut Water Advisory Committee that meets quarterly. Jeff and I sort of tag team on that, and they did meet last week. And a couple of things there. The PURA's sort of COVID relief for water bills is still in place, and you don't need a COVID-related reason to implement it. So if anyone's listening and having trouble paying their water bill, there is an interest-free 24-month payment plan option that's available. At the time of the meeting, they were talking about how they were monitoring the Pomperaug River and drought conditions and implementing the low flow plan as I listened to lots of rain outside here today. But I did see we did implement that and get those notices out a few days ago. So they talked about some water supply issues in the summer. They talked about infrastructure improvements, none of which really were related to the heritage system. And then the big topic was the rate case, which is still pending. The town has submitted comments in opposition to the rate increase. Heritage Village Master Association has submitted objections. And I had expected to have a decision from PURA yesterday, but we got a notice from Connecticut Water today that those deadlines were pushed out, and PURA will be issuing its decision, I think, next week or the week after. So we'll see what they do with the rates. And that's it.
So just, you know, that sometimes you see the flow get down. And what they try to, we try, as we discuss it, is it just happening now? And if we put the warning out and then you get out of it because of the rain that's coming up, or is it going to be, we don't want to up and down the warnings until we meet those numbers. Also on that water, just to mention that to the board, our social services is using that $50,000 fund that we had put in place for when the takeover, and they are working to make sure it's available and to that. So, Selectman Harrison.
Library committee does not, your library board doesn't meet for July or August unless something comes up. They will hold a special meeting, but as you can see in the agenda and the correspondence, they've got a lot of programs coming up, options both virtually and in person to satisfy whichever preference you have. So registration is limited for those that are in person, so I encourage everyone who does want to attend to go ahead and register as quickly as possible. EMS committee is, I believe the EMS plan is under review with the town attorney right now, if I'm not mistaken. They are finalizing their annual report. It's taking a little bit of time because they're still waiting on some of the data. I know that they're having some difficulty getting that, so they're trying to work on some fixes there. And then, if I may, just a personal privilege is I've never spoken outside of my liaison reports, but as we recognize those that are serving the town, I did want to recognize Officer Manville, who hit his 30-year mark with service to the town of Southbury. So just a thank you to him and for sticking with us for so long.
He has been here a long time. Selectman Rosen.
Parks and Rec did not have a quorum, so did not have a meeting this week, but I am glad to report that the Adult Co-ed Softball League is back up and running. And
You playing, Mike?
I will be playing. I
God
missed
bless
last
you.
summer because of COVID. The age requirement was actually reduced. It was initially 30, but Michael Gaddam reduced it to 21 plus, open it up, which is great. I have no problem playing with a 21-year-old. The more the merrier. You just have to be a Southbury resident. But it's on the town website. You can get information to register. I encourage people to do so. Planning has not met, but I do want to just make sure we have a follow-up conversation based on last week about the request from the commission for us to consider either putting back to them on developing or our own developing a policy regarding donated property. It was in the minutes we approved this week, and there just is no formal policy in place, and it's done somewhat ad hoc, and I do believe that it makes sense for us to bring that up. And Region 15 canceled its last meeting of the summer, and deservedly so, I would say, after doing yeoman's work to keep our kids in school and educated. The board has done tremendous work, the administration, the
Tremendous
teachers, the
job.
staff, and the kids, by the way. So they get a well-deserved summer to rest and relax and recharge, and hopefully all be back to together in late August, early September. So that's it.
Very good. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you very much. Have a good 4th of July.
Yes.
Good holiday weekend. Rain or shine.